What if the cat sitting quietly in your living room isn't just a pet, but a spiritual guardian, a being placed in your life for a reason you can't yet fully comprehend? Imagine for a moment that those calm, watchful eyes are not merely observing you, but protecting you, guiding you, perhaps even altering the course of your soul's journey. Has this ever happened to you? That strange sense your cat knows something you don't? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you, and it might change the way you look at your feline companion forever. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. The year was 1943. The world was engulfed in the chaos of World War II. Across oceans and battlefields, fear and uncertainty were at their peak. Yet, in a small, unassuming office in Virginia Beach, far from the noise of artillery and sirens, something remarkable was unfolding. Edgar Cayce, the man known as the Sleeping Prophet, and regarded as the most famous psychic in American history, entered one of his deep trance states. His secretary, Gladys Davis, sat ready with her stenograph, expecting another reading like the hundreds she had transcribed before. But this day would be different. As Cayce spoke, his words carried a weight that neither of them fully understood in that moment. He wasn't speaking about troop movements, political leaders, or the outcome of the war. Instead, he described a future, one far beyond the smoke and rubble of 1943, when humanity would face not a physical threat, but a profound spiritual crisis. It would be an age when people, despite their advanced technology and comforts, would feel deeply disconnected from their own souls. In that prophecy, Cayce revealed something astonishing. He spoke of divine helpers who would walk among us during this time, not angels with wings, not prophets in flowing robes, but beings with fur, whiskers, and an otherworldly gaze. Cats, he said, would serve as spiritual sentinels, guardians placed in our homes and in our lives, with a purpose far greater than simple companionship. Think about that for a moment. Could it be that the gentle purr vibrating against your chest during a difficult day is more than comfort? That your cat curling up beside you isn't random, but intentional, a kind of energetic alignment only they can provide? According to Cayce, each cat carries a unique vibrational signature perfectly matched to a specific human soul. And when these two come together, something powerful happens. It's a thought that blurs the lines between the mystical and the everyday, between what we think we know about animals and the unseen truths that may shape our lives. And here's the thing. Cayce's words were not widely shared at the time. This particular reading was buried in archives for decades, dismissed or simply forgotten, until recent events and emerging research began to cast it in a startling new light. Now, all these years later, as we navigate a world of constant distraction and increasing emotional disconnection, his prophecy feels eerily relevant. Maybe you felt it yourself, that unexplainable comfort when your cat sits with you during moments of sadness, or the way they seem to appear right when you need them most. Are these coincidences, or are they fulfilling the exact role Cayce predicted? What we're going to explore together might just change the way you understand your feline companion, your own energy, and even the unseen forces at work in your life. And this is only the beginning, because in the next part, we'll dive deeper into the details of Cayce's extraordinary vision and the mysterious connection between cats and the human soul that science is only now starting to uncover. Cayce's words painted a future that, at the time, must have seemed almost impossible to imagine. A world overflowing with resources, comfort, and instant access to information, yet starved for meaning. He spoke of a society where abundance would mask a quiet emptiness, where people would surround themselves with conveniences, but feel an ever-growing void within. The danger, he warned, wasn't the chaos of war or the hunger of famine, but something far more insidious, the slow erosion of the human spirit. It was a vision of a spiritual drought, where the mind would be constantly stimulated, but the soul would remain untouched. Imagine a life in which every question could be answered in seconds, but the deeper questions, the ones that shape who we are, were left unasked, buried beneath a constant stream of distractions. This was the transformation he foresaw, not one of progress alone, but of disconnection, where technology would accelerate faster than the wisdom needed to guide it. And in that acceleration, the essence of what makes us human would begin to fade. He wasn't condemning progress itself, but warning of its hidden cost. When the focus shifts entirely to the external, the possessions we acquire, the speed at which we move, the digital noise we consume, the internal compass begins to weaken. Decisions that once came from intuition and deep knowing are replaced by algorithms, trends, and the opinions of strangers. The impact of this shift isn't immediate, but gradual, like a slow fog rolling in until one day we can no longer see what truly matters. Cayce described this as a dangerous imbalance, one where people might still feel moments of happiness, but the undercurrent would be a persistent sense that something essential was missing. That missing piece, he implied, was the connection to the soul, the anchor that keeps us grounded through uncertainty. Without it, even the most beautiful experiences lose their depth, and the brightest successes feel strangely hollow. In the quiet spaces of his trance readings, Cayce saw this not just as an individual struggle, but as a collective turning point for humanity. A moment when, behind the scenes of daily life, an invisible battle would be unfolding, the preservation of the human essence against the pull of a purely mechanical existence. And while his words carried a tone of warning, they also carried a subtle reassurance. There would be guides, protectors, and messengers placed among us to help steer us back when we lost our way. It's here that the hidden truth of his prophecy begins to take shape. These guides wouldn't appear in the grand, dramatic form that myths and legends might suggest. Instead, they would arrive quietly, choosing to walk beside us in the most unassuming of forms, their presence often overlooked until we recognize the profound effect they had on our lives. They would not lecture or demand, but simply be, their energy and presence enough to awaken something dormant within us. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because what Cayce described wasn't just a poetic metaphor. It was a clear vision of how these protectors would operate in our lives, how they would align themselves with our journey, and why they would appear precisely when we needed them most. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." Cayce's revelation about these silent guardians defied the expectations of anyone listening at the time. He didn't speak of grand celestial beings descending from the heavens in a blaze of light, but of small, graceful creatures who would slip into our homes and hearts, almost unnoticed. Cats, he said, were not here by accident. They were spiritual sentinels, placed with deliberate intention to stand watch over the human spirit in its most fragile era. And while the image may seem almost whimsical at first, the more you consider it, the more it begins to fit into a larger pattern, a hidden truth woven quietly into the fabric of our daily lives. He described each cat as carrying a vibrational signature, a frequency so specific and so precise that it resonated with only one soul. This wasn't a casual bond, nor was it based merely on affection or circumstance. It was alignment on a level that most people never realize exists, a connection decided long before the moment when human and feline first meet. If you've ever felt as though a cat found you, rather than the other way around, perhaps that was no coincidence. Perhaps it was part of a far-reaching energetic plan, a decision made, beyond the boundaries of time and space. These beings, according to Cayce, are not here to follow human commands or to adapt to our routines. They are here to do what they've been entrusted to do for lifetimes: protect, realign, and awaken. They sense the fractures in our energy before we do. They position themselves where they are most needed, not just physically but energetically, often without us realizing what they are doing. In moments when our thoughts spiral, they become stillness. In moments when our hearts ache, they become warmth. And in the unseen space between those moments, they are quietly mending what has been frayed. The beauty of this arrangement is in its subtlety. A cat's mission is not to force change, but to create the conditions in which transformation can happen naturally. They embody patience, presence, and a kind of wisdom that doesn't shout for attention. It waits, like a seed that knows exactly when the season will turn. In this way, they become living, Reminders that awakening is not always a sudden event, but a gradual unfolding, shaped by countless small moments that shift our mindset and soften the walls we build around ourselves. When you think about the impact this has, it's almost like discovering a secret ally you never knew you had. Behind the scenes of your everyday life, your feline companion could be guiding your emotional state, helping you make decisions from a place of balance rather than reaction, and shielding you from energies that might pull you further from your true self. They are not just part of the journey, they are part of the reason the journey continues when you might have otherwise stopped. And so, what Cayce offered was not simply an endearing idea about pets, but a revelation about the universe's capacity to intervene in the smallest and most intimate ways. These guardians do not arrive with fanfare. They arrive with a look, a purr, a quiet step that changes everything without demanding recognition. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding how these vibrational signatures work and how they connect to the very essence of our soul's path reveals just how extraordinary this relationship truly is. Put down. I'm also on this path. It's almost unsettling how precise their instincts can be. A cat doesn't just decide to curl up on your chest because it's a warm spot. In moments when your emotions are tangled or your heart feels heavy, they seem to know exactly where to be, as if they can feel the rhythm of your energy faltering, that gentle weight pressing against you, the slow, steady vibration of their purr. It's more than comfort. It's an act of recalibration, a deliberate alignment of frequencies meant to bring you back to center. Science is only beginning to map this territory, measuring the subtle electromagnetic fields that pulse between living beings. Yet Cayce spoke of it decades ago as though it were already a known truth. The impact of their presence goes beyond the emotional. It reaches into the structure of our energy itself. Imagine your body and spirit as a complex network of currents, each one responsible for a part of your well-being. When stress, grief, or fear interrupts that flow, your entire system feels the strain. A cat, in its quiet way, acts like a living tuning fork, resonating at just the right pitch to dissolve the static and restore harmony. This isn't random affection. It's targeted healing, guided by an intelligence we can sense but not yet fully explain. Even their smallest actions carry intention. The way they circle before settling into place, the slow blink that meets your gaze, the subtle shift in position as you move through different states of mind. Each gesture is part of a silent dialogue. They read you in ways that bypass language, responding to shifts in your mood and mindset with a precision that feels almost surgical. And the most remarkable part is that they do this without expectation. There is no demand for acknowledgement, no need for gratitude. The work is its own reward. For those willing to see it, this is transformation in its most organic form. Not a dramatic breakthrough, but a steady rebalancing that, over time, reshapes how you carry yourself in the world. It influences the decisions you make, softens the edges of your reactions, and quietly shifts the trajectory of your journey. And it's all happening behind the scenes, in moments you might dismiss as ordinary. Cayce's insight into this connection hinted at a hidden truth about healing, that it doesn't always require grand interventions. Sometimes it's the smallest, most consistent influences that leave the deepest imprint. A cat lying at the base of your spine, absorbing tension you didn't know you were holding. A soft paw pressing against your shoulder when your thoughts spiral too far. These aren't coincidences. They're part of an ancient agreement between species, one rooted in mutual recognition and an unspoken promise to protect one another. It challenges the way we think about companionship. Perhaps these beings aren't simply sharing space with us, but actively safeguarding our spiritual and emotional integrity. They might be the quiet custodians of our inner equilibrium, guarding it in a world that constantly pulls us out of alignment. And once you start to notice, it becomes impossible to unsee. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding the deliberate nature of these interactions reveals just how intertwined their mission is with our own survival, not just physically, but at the level of the soul itself. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." There's something almost mystical about the timing of their arrival. It's as if they are summoned not by chance, but by an invisible signal sent from the deepest part of you, a silent call your mind may not even realize it's making. Then, in the middle of chaos, grief, or that hollow stillness when life feels unbearably heavy, they appear. Sometimes it's the cat you've lived with for years, suddenly becoming more attentive, their presence sharper, more deliberate. Other times, it's a stray at your doorstep, looking into you with a gaze that feels like recognition. In those moments, you sense on some unspoken level that this isn't a meeting of strangers. It's a reunion. Cayce understood this as part of a larger design, where these beings would find us in our lowest hours to do far more than comfort. They would anchor us, shield us, and quietly work to repair the fractures in our emotional and spiritual core. You can call it instinct, fate, or divine intervention, but when you've lived it, you know it's real. And now, science is beginning to catch up to what mystics like Cayce have always hinted at. Researchers studying feline behavior have measured electromagnetic fields generated by cats, and the results are startling. These aren't vague, mystical vibrations that only the spiritually inclined speak of. They are measurable frequencies, some of which align exactly with human brainwave patterns associated with deep relaxation, emotional regulation, and even physical healing. It's as if their very presence tunes us to a state where our bodies and minds can start repairing themselves. The idea that a purr could be more than a sound, that it could be a targeted natural therapy, challenges much of what we think we know about healing. At around 26 Hz, for example, a cat's purr has been linked to improved bone density, reduced inflammation, and stabilization of heart rhythm. That's not folklore, it's data. But beyond the biology lies something even more compelling: the way these frequencies seem to respond to our individual states, adjusting and shifting as though in conversation with our needs. Imagine the implications of this. It means that in your quietest, most fragile moments, there may be a living being beside you who is not only aware of your inner storm, but actively working to calm it, without you ever having to explain a thing. This is not a performance for our benefit, nor a coincidence born of random behavior. It's the fulfillment of a role written into their very being, a mission they carry without fanfare or recognition. And while machines can measure frequencies, they cannot yet explain the deeper mystery: why these animals choose to bind themselves to us in this way, to take on the weight of our energy and transform it. That's the hidden truth Cayce was pointing to, that love and protection can arrive in forms so ordinary we forget to see the extraordinary within them. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the way these frequencies interact with our emotional landscape opens a door to understanding a much larger connection between the physical and the unseen. Put down, I'm also on this path. The soft rhythmic hum of a cat's purr might seem like nothing more than a sign of contentment, but beneath that familiar sound lies a biological marvel. At 26 Hz, this vibration moves through the body in a way that science now recognizes as physically restorative. It can stimulate bone growth and repair, encourage the reduction of inflammation, and even help stabilize heart rhythms. What we once thought of as simply soothing is, in reality, a precise natural therapy, delivered with the ease of a breath. And yet, this is only part of the story. Cats do not wait for visible signs of pain or distress before stepping in. They operate on a frequency far beyond our conscious perception, sensing shifts in the body's bioelectric field, sometimes up to 48 hours before the human even realizes something is wrong. This ability allows them to act in ways that feel almost prophetic, appearing beside you before your mind has even caught up with what your body is starting to experience. It's not just care, it's prevention, offered in a language of presence and energy rather than words. Think of the hidden advantage this gives you. Before tension becomes illness, before sadness deepens into despair, they've already adjusted their behavior, positioning themselves in just the right way to disrupt the spiral before it begins. A gentle paw on your arm, a sudden decision to follow you from room to room, or that unyielding stare as if they're urging you to pause, all of these moments are calculated responses to shifts they have already detected. It's a partnership that works quietly, behind the scenes, shaping your days without you even realizing the full impact. This awareness extends into the emotional realm as well. They seem to detect the subtle static in your mindset, the way your thoughts bend under the weight of unseen pressures. And in that moment, their presence becomes a counterweight, a grounding force that reorients you toward balance. It's as though they carry a blueprint of your optimal state, and every purr, every brush against your leg, every choice to rest at your side is part of an unspoken plan to guide you back to it. What's striking is the way this challenges our usual understanding of healing. We tend to think of it as reactive, a response to something broken or damaged. But in the presence of these beings, it becomes proactive, woven into daily life as a constant, invisible alignment. They are guardians not only of the present moment, but of the future you have yet to face, ensuring that when difficulties come, you meet them with a stronger foundation. And perhaps this is why so many people describe their cats as having found them at just the right time. It's a timing that feels too precise to dismiss, as though somewhere along the journey, an unseen decision was made to place them exactly where they needed to be. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because exploring how they respond to these subtle energetic cues reveals not only their extraordinary sensitivity, but also the hidden truth about how deeply intertwined their path is with ours. Write in the comments, "I'm also on this path." Isabella had spent her career guiding others through the tangled terrain of grief and trauma, teaching them how to find their way back to the surface after life had pulled them under. But when tragedy struck her own life, the tools she had so skillfully given to others seemed powerless in her own hands. The sudden loss of her husband shattered her world in an instant, and no amount of professional knowledge, friendly support, or well-meant advice could bridge the distance between her and the will to keep going. Days blurred together, heavy and gray, until one evening in a dim parking lot, a faint sound cut through the fog. A fragile, almost desperate meow. Underneath a parked car, she found a battered tabby barely clinging to life, one eye clouded, a leg badly broken. Logic told her to call for help, to hand the problem to someone else, but something deeper, a pull she couldn't explain, made her act differently. She spent what little she had left in her bank account on emergency care, not knowing why she felt so certain this animal had to be saved. That night, the cat she would name Phoenix escaped his carrier and climbed into her lap as though it were the only place in the world he was meant to be. As her hand rested on his fur and the steady pulse of his purr filled the silence, something inside her shifted. It wasn't a dramatic rush of joy or an instant cure. It was subtler than that. The darkness she had been drowning in felt a fraction lighter, as if some unseen weight had lifted just enough for her to take a deeper breath. Over time, she began to notice patterns. Phoenix seemed to know before she did when the shadows in her mind were returning. On those days, he wouldn't leave her side, curling tightly against her chest or throat, purring with a kind of focused intensity that felt purposeful, almost surgical in its precision. It was as if he had a map of her emotional landscape, sensing the cracks and knowing exactly where to apply his quiet repair. The timing was too consistent to be coincidence. Each time he acted this way, the descent into depression slowed, sometimes stopping altogether. In moments when she might have withdrawn from the world entirely, his presence anchored her, reminding her she was still here, still connected to something worth staying for. For Isabella, this wasn't just an emotional bond. It felt like a lifeline, one that reached deeper than human understanding. And when viewed through the lens of Cayce's prophecy, it became almost impossible to ignore the alignment. A cat arriving in a person's darkest hour, providing not just companionship, but a measurable healing influence on mind and body. This was exactly the kind of role he had described decades earlier. It raises a larger question about how many of these moments play out quietly in the background of people's lives, unnoticed for what they truly are. How many rescues are mutual? How often is it the human who believes they've saved the animal, only to realize, sometimes years later, that it was the other way around all along? Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the way these connections form, and the precision with which they unfold, suggests a level of design that challenges everything we think we know about chance. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me," When Dr. Marcus Chen first heard the idea that cats could be quantum entangled with their owners, he dismissed it as poetic language at best. But his skepticism began to crumble the moment he started noticing something strange in his own life. His rescue cat seemed to anticipate his moods with uncanny precision, appearing beside him in moments of mental fatigue or emotional strain, often before he had even acknowledged those feelings himself. It wasn't just emotional mirroring, it was as though they were wired into the same current, their internal states syncing in real time. Intrigued, Chen began to investigate, bringing the tools of his work as a quantum physicist into the quiet space of his own home. What he discovered went beyond the familiar bond between human and animal. Sensitive instruments detected that his cat's nervous system and his own were moving in a kind of synchronized rhythm, like two pendulums finding the same swing. This connection wasn't just emotional, it extended into measurable changes in his physiology, shifts that aligned perfectly with his cat's presence and behavior. From a quantum perspective, this began to resemble a kind of entanglement, a state where two entities remain connected in ways that transcend distance or conventional cause and effect. In such a state, a change in one is reflected instantly in the other, as though they are sharing the same informational space. And if this is true, then the bond between a cat and its human isn't merely affectionate. It's a living feedback loop, each influencing the other's emotional and physical landscape in ways neither fully perceives. This could also explain another mystery that has long fascinated cat owners: their seemingly supernatural awareness. They sit and watch the empty corner of a room with unblinking focus, or react to a soundless moment with sudden attention. To most, it's just odd animal behavior, but if cats act as living bridges between dimensions, as Cayce suggested, then their perception isn't bound by the same filters as ours. They may be tuned to energy fields, subtle presences, and patterns of information that we simply cannot detect with our senses. This opens up an entirely different understanding of their role. If they are indeed connected to us at such a fundamental level, and if they can access realms of perception beyond our own, then their guidance becomes more than instinct. It becomes an intentional navigation through a reality we barely grasp. They can stand guard over our emotional state while simultaneously attuning to environmental energies, alerting us in subtle ways when something around us shifts. It's a perspective that reframes countless everyday interactions. That pause they take before moving closer to you, the moment they leave the room without warning, the way they choose a particular spot to settle. These may all be responses to layers of reality operating behind the scenes. And in the context of a quantum connection, every decision they make could have a direct impact on your own energy, shaping your mindset, altering the course of your day, even influencing the small but crucial decisions you make without realizing why. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding how this connection works and what it reveals about the hidden truth of our shared journey might completely change the way you see every moment spent in their presence. Write in the comments, "I'm also on this path." There's a quiet precision in the way certain encounters happen, as if some invisible law of nature is at work. Cayce called it soul magnetism, the unseen pull that draws two beings together at exactly the moment they are meant to meet. It's not coincidence, not chance, but an alignment so specific that it feels like the threads of two journeys were woven to cross long before either could imagine it. For cats, this pull seems almost undeniable. They arrive as if summoned, not always by a call we make with our voice, but by a resonance deep in the soul. Maria Santos had never kept pets. Her family wasn't particularly fond of animals, and her grandmother, a woman of tradition and habit, had lived her entire life without so much as a houseplant for company. But in the final week of her grandmother's life, something shifted. A calico cat began appearing outside the window each afternoon, settling on the sill with an intensity in her gaze that unsettled everyone. She wouldn't look away from the old woman, her green eyes fixed, unblinking, as if she could see past the frail body and into something beyond it. As the days passed, the visits continued. No one knew where the cat had come from. She didn't belong to any neighbor and bore no collar or sign of ownership. On the day Maria's grandmother took her last breath, The family found the cat inside the house, curled up gently on the bed beside her. She refused to move, even as relatives came and went, even as the air grew heavy with grief. Only after the funeral did she disappear, vanishing as suddenly as she had arrived, leaving no trace behind. In Brazilian folklore, cats are said to guide souls safely to the afterlife, ensuring they do not wander lost between worlds. Maria, who had heard these stories as a child but never given them much thought, couldn't help but wonder if what she had witnessed was the living embodiment of that belief. Her grandmother, once fearful of death, had passed with a calmness and faint smile that no one expected. For Maria, the hidden truth was impossible to ignore. Perhaps the cat hadn't come to comfort the living, but to lead the departing. When you start to notice these moments, they seem to form a pattern, a tapestry of arrivals and departures, where cats step in at the threshold between what was and what will be. Whether they are answering the call of a life in crisis or the quiet surrender of a life coming to its close, their timing is flawless, their presence undeniable. It's as if they hold some map of human experience that allows them to navigate straight to the point where they are most needed. And maybe that's the deeper impact of soul magnetism, the idea that we are not moving through our lives alone, but within a web of connections that will pull the right beings to us at the right moment. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding why these meetings happen, and how they seem to transcend logic, reveals something profound about the journey we are all taking. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." In the stillness that followed her grandmother's passing, Maria couldn't shake the image of that calico cat, curled like a guardian in those final moments. The room had been heavy with the scent of lilies and whispered prayers, yet there was also an undeniable sense of peace, a kind of closure that went deeper than the human rituals unfolding around the bed. Whether or not one believed in the folklore, the effect was real. Fear had been replaced by acceptance, and what could have been a lonely departure became a passage softened by presence. It was in that quiet, Maria realized, that the line between myth and truth blurred, leaving only the impact behind. This is the space Cayce seemed to speak to when he described sensitive souls awakening to their true nature. These are the individuals who, without necessarily understanding why, feel an instinctive pull toward cats, and just as importantly, cats feel an equal pull toward them. It's as though both are responding to the same unspoken frequency, a resonance that bypasses logic and moves straight to recognition. These encounters aren't simply about companionship. They are catalysts for transformation, moments that alter the direction of a person's inner journey. Once that connection is made, something begins to shift. The human becomes more attuned, more open to subtleties they might have missed before. The flicker of emotion in a glance, the unexplainable certainty in a decision, the sense of being gently guided rather than walking alone. The cat, in turn, seems to step fully into its role, no longer just a quiet observer, but an active participant in the person's emotional and spiritual landscape. It's a partnership woven in trust and silent understanding. Over time, these bonds form an intricate, invisible network, not in the digital sense we've grown used to, but in the way roots of separate trees connect beneath the earth, sharing resources and strength in ways unseen from above. In this living web, the presence of each awakened soul amplifies the presence of the others. It's not about proximity or constant contact, it's about alignment. Somewhere in this hidden system, the cats are both messengers and anchors, ensuring that those who have begun to remember who they are do not forget again. This network doesn't announce itself. There's no label, no formal gathering, and yet it exists, a quiet current running beneath everyday life. If you've ever locked eyes with your cat and felt, in that single moment, as though an entire conversation had taken place without a sound, you've touched a piece of it. That's the hidden truth at the core of Cayce's vision, that awakening isn't an isolated event. It's part of a collective unfolding, one that is nurtured and protected by these small, graceful guardians who seem to know far more than they let on. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding how these connections ripple outward, influencing not only individuals but the greater journey we're all on, reveals just how vast and intentional this unseen network really is. Write in the comments, "I'm also on this path." Across continents and cultures, the same kinds of stories keep surfacing, moments when a cat's presence seems to do more than comfort, when it sparks something that feels like an awakening. These aren't isolated anecdotes whispered in small circles. They are shared by people who have never met, whose lives could not be more different, yet whose experiences carry the same unmistakable thread. In these accounts, cats are not passive companions. They are catalysts, stepping into the current of a person's life at exactly the moment they are ready to shift, heal, or remember something they had forgotten about themselves. It's in these stories that Cayce's vision stops feeling like prophecy and starts feeling like an ongoing, living reality. The details may change. A rural village in South America, a busy city apartment in Europe, a quiet suburban home in North America, but the impact is eerily similar. Physical pain lessens without clear medical explanation. Emotional wounds that felt permanent begin to soften. People who had felt disconnected from meaning or purpose suddenly find themselves moving through life with a renewed sense of clarity. Jennifer Walsh's story fits this pattern perfectly. A software engineer from Seattle, she had turned to meditation as a way to find balance in a demanding, fast-moving life. At first, her cat Luna would simply be nearby during her practice, watching quietly from across the room. But over time, Jennifer noticed something shift. Whenever she sat down to meditate, Luna would approach and position herself directly in front of her, close her eyes, and match her breathing. The effect was subtle, but profound. As Jennifer's breaths grew slower and deeper, she could feel Luna's body rise and fall in the same rhythm, a perfect mirror. There was no distraction in it, no intrusion, just a shared stillness that felt like they had slipped into the same inner space. In that space, Jennifer began to experience visions, flashes of insight, and a heightened awareness of her own energy. It was as though Luna's presence created a stabilizing anchor, allowing her to travel further inward without losing her way back. Moments like these defy the boundaries we try to place between human and animal. They suggest a shared consciousness that operates outside of language, outside of logic, and yet is as tangible as the air between two steady breaths. For Jennifer, meditation was no longer a solitary practice. It had become a co-created experience, an unspoken agreement to hold space for each other's growth. These experiences, repeated in countless forms around the world, weave together a hidden truth. Cats are not merely walking beside us on our journeys, they are shaping the path as we go. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because exploring how they participate in these shared energetic states reveals just how deliberate their role in our transformation truly is. Write in the comments, "I'm also on this path." What's most surprising about a cat's healing ability is that it doesn't come only from the familiar sound of purring. The entire electromagnetic field of their body carries these restorative frequencies, radiating subtly yet constantly, like a quiet hum, beneath the noise of everyday life. You feel it most when they press against you, that warm weight on your lap, the brush of fur along your arm, the way they settle into your side, as if fitting into a space made just for them. In those moments, something shifts. It's not dramatic, not loud, but a recalibration you can sense in your breathing, your thoughts, even the way your muscles release tension without you realizing it. This isn't imagination, it's measurable. The energy they emit interacts with our own, creating a kind of dialogue between bodies. And in that dialogue, they seem to know exactly what we need. Dr. Janet Morrison's research with therapy cats revealed something extraordinary. These animals don't randomly choose where to rest. They consistently position themselves on or near the parts of the human body most in need of restoration, often aligning with known chakra points. If your emotional center is heavy, they may rest across your chest. If your thoughts are scattered, they might curl near your head. The precision of this placement suggests an awareness that goes far beyond instinct. It's as if they are reading an invisible map, tracing the lines of imbalance in our energy fields, and then using their presence to realign them. The effect isn't only physical, it touches the emotional and spiritual layers too. You might notice that, after such moments, Your mind feels clearer, your mood steadier, and an inner stillness returns, even if nothing in your external circumstances has changed. That's the hidden truth of this kind of healing. It works from the inside out, shifting the foundation so that everything built upon it feels more stable. What makes this even more remarkable is how naturally it happens. There's no ceremony, no overt display. They don't announce their intent, they simply arrive, settle, and begin their work, often while we're too distracted to notice the transformation taking place. Only afterward, when the heaviness lifts or the tension eases, do we realize something within us has been restored. It reframes how we think about care and connection. We're used to seeking solutions through deliberate action, decisions, treatments, changes in routine. But here, the healing is woven seamlessly into moments of quiet companionship, offered without demand or expectation. It's a reminder that sometimes the most profound impact comes from what feels effortless. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because exploring how cats identify and respond to these subtle imbalances reveals not just their sensitivity, but the larger role they may be playing in our personal transformation. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." One of the most striking and perhaps most overlooked aspects of a cat's role in our lives is their ability to take on what we cannot carry ourselves. It's not just about soothing us in the moment, it's about absorbing the dense, heavy energy that builds up when we are under emotional strain, facing illness, or living through periods of deep uncertainty. Many people have noticed that during the hardest chapters of their lives, their cats become unusually attentive, spending more time pressed against them, seeking prolonged physical contact. And then, almost inexplicably, the cat falls ill or shows signs of fatigue, as though they have taken some of that burden into themselves. It's not a romanticized notion, it's an exchange. They are transmuting what they absorb, breaking down that stagnant energy, and reshaping it into something that can be released. In a sense, they are alchemists, transforming pain into a softer frequency, one that can be integrated rather than fought against. This is not without cost to them, and perhaps that's part of the hidden truth behind their quiet nature. They know the work they're doing, and they know it's not infinite, yet they give it freely, without hesitation, because it's built into their purpose. What makes this even more compelling is how often these experiences repeat across cultures and geographies. In countless online communities, people share eerily similar accounts. A cat who refuses to leave their side days before a diagnosis, who wakes them in the middle of the night before a medical crisis, or who begins acting strangely moments before an unexpected event. It's as if they have access to a timeline we can't see, perceiving the ripple before it becomes the wave. These patterns aren't limited to the dramatic moments of life. Even subtle shifts in our health or emotional balance seem to register with them. And when so many unrelated people, separated by oceans and languages, describe nearly identical behaviors, the possibility of a global feline spiritual network begins to feel less like speculation and more like a quiet reality happening behind the scenes. Each bond becomes a thread in that network, carrying not just affection but information, awareness, and a kind of watchful protection that transcends physical distance. It reframes the way we think about connection itself. Perhaps the ties that bind us to these animals are not confined to the walls of our homes, but are part of something far larger, a living web that senses, responds, and adapts as needed, linking human lives through the guardianship of beings who seem to stand half in our world and half in another. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding how these protective exchanges work, and how they ripple outward through this unseen network, might change the way you see every moment you share with them. Put down, "I'm also on this path." Children seem to live closer to the edges of the unseen, carrying a kind of openness that adulthood often dims. They haven't yet built the same walls of doubt, or the constant filters that keep most people rooted only in what can be explained. This is why, when it comes to sensing a cat's deeper nature, they rarely hesitate, they simply accept it. To them, the silent gaze, the sudden appearance, or the way a cat positions itself isn't strange. It's part of a language they already understand. That openness creates the conditions for a bond that feels less like ownership and more like a direct channel, a meeting of minds without a single word spoken. Marcus, an 8-year-old with an easy laugh and a constant curiosity about the world, became the center of one such extraordinary connection. His parents thought nothing of it when he began saying that his cat Whiskers talked to him. But over time, Marcus's descriptions became harder to dismiss. He said Whiskers didn't speak in sentences but showed him images in his mind, scenes that felt vivid and complete, almost like memories he hadn't lived yet. One day, Marcus announced casually that his grandfather would be visiting soon, even though no one had told him such a thing, and no plans had been made. 3 days later, the phone rang. His grandfather had decided, entirely, on a whim, to come for a surprise visit. Incidents like this began piling up, small but specific moments Marcus could not have known about, yet somehow did. For him, there was no mystery to solve. Whiskers had shown him, and that was enough. This kind of exchange defies the way we usually think about communication. It suggests that information can flow through channels we can't measure, passed along not in words but in impressions, emotions, and visions. And for children who haven't yet decided what is and isn't possible, receiving it feels as natural as breathing. It also points to a hidden truth about these feline bonds. They may not just heal us or protect us, they might actively expand our awareness, sharpening our intuition, and nudging us toward decisions that align with a greater design. Stories like Marcus's remind us that these connections can shape a person's journey from an early age, planting seeds of trust in the unseen that might guide them for a lifetime. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because when you start to explore how these exchanges happen and how they influence not only perception, but the very course of a life, it opens a door to understanding the real scope of their impact. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." Lily's parents always thought their daughter had an active imagination, the kind that filled her afternoons with colorful drawings and elaborate stories. But when she began talking about her cat, Mittens, taking her to star worlds in her dreams, they weren't prepared for what came next. Lily described places that seemed too precise for a child her age, constellations positioned exactly as they appear in certain hemispheres, planetary details she had never been taught, and patterns of movement in the night sky that aligned perfectly with actual astronomical events. Her parents were stunned. She had no access to advanced books on the subject, no lessons, and no interest in science programs. Yet, she spoke of these cosmic landscapes as if she'd walked their glowing paths 100 times. For Lily, these dream journeys weren't just visions, they were experiences. She explained that Mittens would guide her through fields of light, introducing her to shapes and beings she couldn't fully describe but said were part of the sky itself. Each time she returned, she carried back not just the wonder of what she had seen, but a calmness, as though something in those travels had steadied her spirit. It was a reminder that these feline connections may open doors to realms we rarely acknowledge, places where knowledge is not learned, but remembered. This kind of experience fits seamlessly into what Cayce foresaw, a period he called the dark night of the soul, when humanity would sink into a deep crisis of spirit before reawakening to its higher nature. Looking around today, his prediction feels uncomfortably close. Rates of depression and anxiety have never been higher. People are more connected digitally, yet feel more isolated than ever. Communities that once provided meaning and belonging have fractured, leaving many adrift in a sea of endless noise but scarce depth. It's in this climate of quiet despair that the role of these guardians becomes even clearer. They are not just here to soothe the surface, but to act as anchors to something eternal, a constant reminder of the connection we've lost sight of. When a child like Lily comes back from a dream speaking of stars and strange worlds, maybe it's not just fantasy. Maybe it's a lifeline, a thread pulled from beyond the veil, offering reassurance that there is more to this life than the chaos we see around us. And perhaps that's why these stories matter so much now. They aren't just charming anecdotes about the bond between humans and cats. They are clues, scattered across the globe, pointing toward a truth we're being asked to remember. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding How these moments of connection emerge in the middle of our collective disconnection could reveal why they may be essential to our survival, both individually and as a species. Write in the comments, "I'm also on this path." In times when the world feels unsteady, when the noise outside drowns out the voice within, there is something quietly unshakable about a cat's presence. They don't try to pull you out of the darkness with force. Instead, they sit with you in it, anchoring you in a way that words could never manage. It's as though they hold an invisible thread that keeps you tethered to the deepest, most unchanging part of yourself, the part untouched by fear, loss, or uncertainty. They remind you without speeches or explanations that no matter how far you drift, you are still connected to your eternal soul. This is why their presence can feel like such a refuge. You might not even realize the shift happening inside you until much later, when you look back and notice how their stillness became your stability. They seem to understand that love isn't about fixing or forcing. It's about holding space until you remember your own strength. And in that stillness, they communicate something profound, that love itself vibrates at a frequency beyond the limits of the physical world. When a cat meets your eyes and holds your gaze, it can feel disarming. There's a depth there that doesn't belong to mere instinct. It's as if they're looking past the layers you present to the world, past the stories you tell yourself, straight into the quiet truth of who you are. That connection bypasses the mind entirely. It's not about logic or explanation, it's recognition. You feel seen in a way that has nothing to do with appearance or identity, and everything to do with essence. And perhaps this is part of their hidden role, to keep us in touch with that essence when life pulls us away from it. In a reality that constantly demands action, productivity, and outward focus, their gift is the reminder that there is another way to exist, one rooted in presence, in the simple act of being. This is more than companionship. It's a living lesson in alignment, an ongoing invitation to slow down and return to the frequency where love is not earned or measured, but simply is. It's here, in these moments of still connection, that the boundaries between human and animal seem to blur. You are no longer two separate beings, but part of the same quiet current, sharing something that feels older than memory. And once you've felt that, it changes you. It alters the way you move through the world, the decisions you make, and the way you see not just your cat, but everything around you. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding how this frequency of love works and how it transforms us from the inside out might reveal why these connections are not just comforting, but essential. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." There's a kind of healing that doesn't come from long conversations or step-by-step plans, the kind that doesn't ask you to explain yourself or justify what you're feeling. It arrives quietly, bypassing the tangled loops of logic, and goes straight to the part of you that has been holding on for too long. This is the space where a cat's love lives, in that unspoken connection that can ease the weight of depression, soften the edges of anxiety, and spark the faint but unmistakable light of hope where it once felt impossible. It's not a cure in the traditional sense, it's a restoration of something more fundamental, a reminder that even in the most difficult seasons, there is still a part of you untouched by the chaos. People who've experienced this often struggle to explain it. How do you put into words the way despair seems to lose its grip when you feel that steady presence against you? Or how a single moment of shared stillness can make you believe, if only for a heartbeat, that things will be okay. It doesn't follow the rules of cause and effect as we know them. It feels older, deeper, a kind of knowing that belongs to the soul, not the mind. And perhaps it's no coincidence that, in recent years, shelters and rescue centers have seen a surge in cats appearing, waiting for adoption. These are not just abandoned animals searching for a home. Many seem to arrive with a strange sense of readiness, as if they are looking for someone specific. Volunteers tell stories of cats who ignore dozens of visitors, but lock eyes with one person and refuse to let them walk away. Time and again, those humans describe feeling chosen, as though the meeting had been arranged long before either of them stepped into that room. When you look at it through the lens of Cayce's prophecy, the timing feels almost deliberate. At a moment in history when disconnection and emotional exhaustion are reaching record levels, These feline guardians are appearing in greater numbers, as if assembling for a purpose. The pattern is hard to ignore. The need is growing, and so is their presence. It's as though something behind the scenes is orchestrating these encounters, ensuring that the right cat finds the right person at the exact moment they're needed most. Perhaps this is why so many people describe their adoptions as anything but random. What if this sudden rise in availability isn't a coincidence, but part of the unfolding of a much larger design? Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because exploring the hidden currents guiding these meetings might reveal why so many of us are being called into these connections right now. Write in the comments, "I'm also on this path." If you share your life with a cat, you're not simply a pet owner. You're part of something much larger, a quiet but powerful movement unfolding in real time. Whether you realize it or not, your home has become a small sanctuary within this great spiritual awakening, and your feline companion is far more than a source of affection. They are a healer who restores balance when the world feels overwhelming, a teacher who shows you the art of presence without ever speaking a word, and a guide whose role is to keep you connected to truths you might otherwise forget. The depth of their perception is something science is only beginning to approach, yet anyone who has truly observed them can sense it. They notice shifts that our eyes cannot see, hear patterns in the silence, and respond to changes in the environment that we dismiss as nothing. And perhaps most intriguing of all is the way they seem to guard spaces. That lingering stare into a corner, the focused stillness in the middle of an otherwise calm moment. It's easy to laugh it off as feline quirkiness. But what if it's something else? What if they are watching the thresholds between dimensions, standing quietly at the edges of reality, ensuring that nothing unwanted crosses into the space where you live and breathe? Cayce's vision hinted at this kind of work, describing guardianship not just over our bodies and minds, but over the unseen boundaries that protect our spiritual well-being. It reframes those strange, unexplainable moments as deliberate acts, part of a vigilance we rarely acknowledge. And it suggests that when you feel safer in their presence, it's not only because of the comfort they give, it's because they are actively holding a kind of energetic perimeter around you. This is where their role as protectors becomes even more fascinating. They are not simply shielding you from what's obvious. They are holding space in ways you cannot detect, but can absolutely feel. You might notice it in the way certain rooms feel lighter when they're there, or in the sudden ease you feel after they've spent hours near you. These are not coincidences. They're part of a pattern woven into their very nature. Living alongside such a being means you are constantly in the presence of a consciousness attuned to both your inner world and the unseen landscapes around you. And the more aware you become of this, the more you start to notice the subtle signals, the moments when they are not just with you, but working for you in ways that defy conventional understanding. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because exploring what it truly means for them to guard these spiritual thresholds could reveal the hidden truth about the forces they keep at bay, and why their vigilance may be more important now than ever. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." There's a certain kind of meeting that defies explanation, the kind that happens when you open your door and find a pair of unfamiliar eyes looking back at you. Maybe it's a cat you've never seen before, standing there as if it's been waiting for you, not just for hours but for years. In that instant, something deep inside you recognizes the moment, even if your mind rushes to fill it with practical thoughts. You wonder where they came from, if they're hungry, if they belong to someone nearby. But beneath those questions is an unshakable feeling that this encounter was always meant to happen. Cayce's insight reframes these moments as more than chance. A stray arriving at your doorstep can be an answer to a call you didn't know you'd made, a response to a shift in your energy or a need you've been carrying quietly. On some level, your soul might have reached out, and the universe, in its own deliberate way, sent an emissary in fur and whiskers. These are the kinds of connections that don't need an introduction because they begin as if they've been there all along. Seen through this lens, each arrival is part of a far greater architecture, a divine plan woven from the threads of timing, intuition, and purpose. You may think you're the one offering shelter, food, and safety, but often it's the other way around. They're there to offer something intangible yet essential: protection, grounding, and a reminder that you are not moving through your life unseen. And this is where the core of Cayce's prophecy begins to glow more brightly. At its heart, it wasn't just about cats, or even about the mystical abilities they carry. It was about love, not the kind limited by circumstance, but the vast, enduring force that the universe deploys in the moments when we need it most. These beings arrive as messengers of that love, sent to ensure that no one faces the weight of their own darkness entirely alone. This is compassion, in its most practical form, expressed not through words or abstract ideals, but through presence. A cat doesn't arrive with instructions or grand declarations. They show up, they sit with you, they hold the space that needs holding, and in doing so, they become a living proof that the unseen world is not indifferent to your struggles, that there are forces quietly, consistently working to keep you tethered to hope. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding how these messengers are placed in our lives, and the hidden truth of the love they carry, can transform the way you see every chance encounter that crosses your path. Write in the comments, "I'm also on this path." When you look at your cat and realize their presence in your life isn't random, something inside you shifts. It's not just the comfort of having them nearby. It's the knowing, deep and quiet, that you are loved, guided, and protected in ways you can't always see. These aren't passive creatures simply adapting to the life you've built. They are conscious beings who, on some level beyond time, chose you, chose to walk beside you in this chapter, chose to share your burdens and joys, chose to remind you of truths you might have forgotten. If you allow yourself to really feel it, the weight of that choice is profound. It suggests a connection that didn't begin when you brought them home or when they appeared at your door. It hints at a bond that has stretched across lifetimes, reuniting when the timing is right, when the circumstances demand it, and when both of you are ready to continue the work you started long ago. This isn't sentimentality. It's an invitation to see your shared journey as part of something much larger than the span of a single life. And as extraordinary as that sounds, it's not happening in isolation. Step back and you can sense it. This unfolding isn't limited to you and your cat. It's taking place in countless homes, across every continent, one purr at a time. The prophecy Cayce described is no longer a vision of some distant future. It's alive now, woven into the fabric of daily life. It's in the stranger who adopts a shelter cat and unknowingly brings a healer into their home. It's in the child who finds a confidant in their feline friend and grows up carrying an unshakable sense of connection. It's in every quiet exchange where no words are needed, but everything essential is communicated. Every bond becomes a thread in a greater tapestry, a vast, intricate network of awakenings and transformations. Each moment of trust, each shared breath, each healing touch adds to the momentum of a shift that is both deeply personal and undeniably collective. And perhaps the most powerful part is that it doesn't require anything more than being fully present in the relationship you already have. The beauty of this prophecy is in its simplicity. Change doesn't always announce itself with thunder. Sometimes it comes wrapped in fur, curling into your lap, carrying the weight of centuries, and the promise of something eternal. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding how your individual bond fits into this larger cosmic awakening may reveal the hidden truth about why your paths crossed exactly when they did. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." If you've stayed with me all the way to this point, then you already know this wasn't just a story about cats. It was about the invisible threads that connect us, guide us, and remind us of who we really are. If you want to keep exploring these kinds of truths together, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next. And since you made it to the very end, let me know in the comments by writing, "I'm with you until the end." I'd love to see who felt this message as deeply as I did while sharing it. If this journey resonated with you, give the video a like. It's a simple way to keep this conversation alive and let me know that it reached you in the right moment. There's a video right here that complements this topic beautifully. Click and continue with me over there.